It's my pleasure to host this today. So glad you took the time to come. I'd like to introduce Dr. Fall. What should I say about you? No, sorry. He is a best-selling author, keynote speaker. He holds his PhD from the University of Iowa in psychology and has been providing psychotherapy to his patients in many different settings. In the past 7 years, he has been attending to patients in communities such as ours, the continuing care retirement communities. He's worked in all kinds of settings. In communities like ours, he goes to assisted living, long-term care settings, and independent living. He currently works for Deer Oaks Mental Health, and they are servicing our community to provide psychosocial support. And we're very pleased to have him here. He's been, I think, on campus about 8 months. I told him it felt like much longer, but we are very pleased to have him. So we are excited to have him, and without further ado, please help me in welcoming him, and I'll get out of the way. All right.
Okay, I usually don't use a microphone, so let me know if you can't hear me, okay? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, I want to tell you about Joyce. Joyce is someone you don't know. I saw her years ago in a state far, far away. Confidentiality is very important to me. But Joyce was just another person for me to talk to. I walked into the room. I had interviewed hundreds of people before her. But I walked into the room and I had began to see something I had never seen before. And when I say that, I've worked on inpatient units. I've seen a lot. But I saw something in Joyce I had never seen before. As I sat down with her to interview her, she began moving uncontrollably. She was 62 years old, pretty lady, and I watched her, and it was hard to have a conversation with her. It was painful to watch her. I can't imagine what she was experiencing. Her movement was so bad, I thought she was going to fall out of the chair. I was able to get a 15-minute interview out of her and get to know just a little bit. Probably the most important thing I learned about Joyce that day was she had been to numerous neurologists. And every one of them told her, "We can't find anything wrong with you. We think it's psychological." Well, bear with me. I know she's an extreme case, and I don't see anyone in the audience today that is similar to her, but maybe you'll be able to relate to part of her story as we go along, okay? I'm going to use her as an example, as extreme as she may be. As a speaker, you're supposed to know your audience, right? I have to know what you want to hear from me. But there's about 110 people here. There's 110 different stories. And I don't know where you are in the spectrum of everything is great and everything seems to be falling apart. During my life, I've been somewhere along the spectrum. But maybe I don't know your specifics. Let's see. But I think it's important, if I can't know you, I do think it's very important that you know me. I am a geriatric psychologist. And if you would have told me, I'm a second career. I went back in my 40s and got my PhD. It about killed me, let me tell you. And at the same time, this is my mom, Carolyn, and Dad, Marvin. They're my heroes. I'm going to tell some stories about them. I have their permission. They died 5 and 6 years ago. And as they were living independently, I started to watch what was happening with them and the struggles they were having. And they were tough. They were tough as can be, especially my mom. As they got older, I let them live in independent living as long as they possibly could. And then, did I just hear someone say, see? It's important that you have choice and that you have control over your life. That is not insignificant. And so, one night my dad called me at 1 o'clock in the morning and he said, I can't get Mom off the floor. And she had been declining, and long story short, she had to be admitted into the nursing home. Dad could simply not take care of her anymore. But shortly thereafter, he followed her. And this is a picture of us in the nursing home. I watched Mom really struggle with the aging process. And Dad was kind of a more happy-go-lucky type of person. And he would roll with the flow. He had fun wherever he went. Mom struggled. She came from a rough background, and she was anxious. And she had her own story. I remember towards the end of their lives, my dad's memory had gone, and they had moved him. I went to have dinner with my mom, and it was just her and I at the table. They had moved my dad to another table so they could feed him, and my mom was mad that day. It wasn't unusual. She didn't like all the loss in her life. She was angry, and what she was angry about that day was the day prior, they had served her a big piece of lettuce. Just a big piece of lettuce, Kevin. What am I supposed to do with that? It's a big piece of lettuce. I'm sorry, Mom. You see that table over there? She pointed to a table, and there was 4 guys. All of them were bald. After I got done eating, I just took that piece of lettuce, and I plopped it on one of their heads. I go, Mom, what'd they do? I don't know. I didn't stick around to find out. Mom was cantankerous. I love my mom. I was very good to the nurses. But why do I do this? I don't want to come across as Dr. Fall teaching you something. I go by Kevin. And I want you to know where I'm coming from as your speaker today. I do this because I love it. I watched my parents go through the aging process. 2% of psychologists work in geriatric psychology. It's hard. I love it. It gives me energy. And it's important that I let you know how I look at you. I come from a place of respect. I'm not here to teach you something. I'm here to talk about something with you. And so that is my heart. I'm not Dr. Fall, I'm Kevin. And I go through things just like you. So today I want to have a conversation. I do want to get done in time for us to have some questions if you have any. I hope to cure psychology of a bad reputation. That's one of the reasons I went into it. I sought counseling in my life earlier, and it was really hard for me to get the help that I really needed. They really didn't help me any. And I want to cure psychology of its bad reputation. I remember my dad talking about somebody seeing a psychologist, and they used to talk like this. You know it. Oh, they're seeing a psychologist. They're nuttier than a fruitcake. Okay, Dad, that's what I do. I'm going to talk about the dark side of this presentation is about some of the natural things that happen as we age. Stuff happens. And we're going to talk about some stuff that you already know about, but I'm going to put it in the context of mental health. But what I really want to relay to you is a message of hope. I'm going to share with you 5 things or strategies that can make all of our lives better, whether things have already happened to us or things are starting to happen to us. And finally, if we have time, I'll talk a little bit about how therapy works. I don't want this to come across as a commercial. What I would love to happen is you would take some of these things, implement it, and I would never have to meet you. But if I have to, we're going to work through it together. But I don't want this to come across as a commercial. I want to provide some value here. Psychology's reputation. Joyce was a wrecked car. She was mentally ill. I didn't think so, but that's what her family thought. Psychology has this reputation. It happened in 1946. It was after the war. The troops were coming home, and academia needed money to fund their researching. Well, psychology had 3 goals at the time: to help with mental illness, but the 2 have long been forgotten, and it's what I want to focus on. The second one's what I want to focus on. Is number 2, the psychology's goal was to help people live more fulfilling lives. That sounds like a reasonable deal. That doesn't sound like nutty as a fruitcake. That sounds like, yeah, let's live our best life. And the third one was to foster talent in the United States. Academic, I think we were in the middle of Sputnik had launched, and we were trying to keep up in the Cold War. But psychology started applying for grants, and they could only get grants for the mentally ill. So that has been psychologists' focus for all these years. And I don't think they've done a very good job of marketing itself to the general public. I was in my 30s when I had my great awakening. I was a information technology program manager. And long story short, there was something wrong with me. I needed to fix it. I didn't know what it was. I went to a psychologist. No one could help me. The one guy that helped me the most stood there as I was talking and gave me one of these. How does that make you feel? How do you think it makes me feel? That was my experience. I came across a seminar that really took me to ground zero. But to look at me, I was like you. I was making good money. I had good relationship with my kids. It looked like on the outside I was doing fine, but I wasn't. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is I was able to change the way I looked at myself and related to other people. It completely changed my life. My life is much more fulfilling that once I was able to make those changes and implement them. It was a lot of work. Diagnosis. We have to have them. It helps us communicate. It helps us with research. But I don't like it serving as a scarlet letter on someone. You're depressed. You're this. You're that. Now, granted, biologically, we're predisposed to some things that we have to manage, sometimes through medication, sometimes through therapy, sometimes with both. But I don't like looking at diagnosis as a scarlet letter. And I think psychology hasn't done itself any favor. So anyway, let's move on. I look at people as good, but they're going through hard things. That's how I see people. It's hard for me not to deeply care for someone I meet and share life with. Okay. Let's get this right. Remember when? Yeah. Now, some of you carry scars and have carried them your whole life. Others may not even know about it. But I remember when I was that age. Remember, just live for the day. Just live for the day. Life was great. I just had a chance to meet Pete and Doris today. 72 years of marriage. Do you remember when you got married? The pastor, Justice of Peace, stood in front of you for better, for worse. And Pete, you were probably thinking, worse? What could happen? This is going to be awesome. And then life happens. I don't know what you're going through. I just met you. But if you've been married, you know it's not all bed of roses. This is me and my granddaughter this weekend. I used to run track, and I used to run trying to get to the finish line first. At 58 years old, I'm seeing the finish line, and I'm thinking, whoa, This is way too close. I'm not in a hurry to get there. But I'm younger than you, but I'm starting to see it, and I talk to people like you all day long. And it makes me think about it. My granddaughter and I give each other a hard time. We have a lot of laughter in our, here I am a grandpa. I don't have very many more days years like this. She's 8 years old. She had the audacity to say to me this weekend, "Grandpa, gross. You have hair growing out of your ear." So none of us get away with, none of us skate through life. I want to turn the conversation a little dark for a second. And again, this isn't to scare anyone, and I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't already know. But as we get older, stuff happens. My mom used to say, and I promised them I would clean it up. My mom used to say, "This getting old is the pits." That's not really what she said, but it rhymed with pits. And it does. As we begin to age, things start to happen. For Joyce, as I worked with her over the months, I got to know her, and as a young child, and it's not always important to go back to the childhood, right? But we did. As a young child, she learned to find out what people wanted in her family and do it for them. I'm a people pleaser. As a people pleaser, she gets married and just happened to get a guy who liked to not do anything. She was a medical professional. He just lived off her money. It failed. She got married again, same thing. Had a son, had a very severe drug habit. She depleted all of her assets, her 401k, trying to help her family. Her son just kept getting worse and worse. And as Joyce began to have these uncontrollable body movements, she lost her job. Her family looked at her and goes, "Look what you did. You screwed this up, didn't you? We're going to put you in a nursing home." That was a reality for Joyce, and that was what looked like the rest of her life. She had. Some of you have had tremendous tragedy. Tragedy I can't imagine. Loss. I used to talk to my mom about, I moved them out of their apartment into the home. Some of you guys sold your home to move into John Knox Village. It's a great place. I love John Knox Village. But there's a transition there that's not always easy. There's letting go of things that were part of your life. And there's a cost to that transition. Some of you may have breezed through it. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. There can be a real loss. Leaving your community, leaving your church. As nice as John Knox Village is, there is a cost to getting uprooting, even though it may be the best decision for you. Loneliness. I just want to stop on loneliness for a second. Marcia, would you stand up? You guys get to see the nice, shiny Kevin that comes into your house. This is my wife. She gets the dull, tired of listening, Kevin. She's the better half of this relationship. Loneliness. I was talking to my wife, Marcia, the other day, and talking about my youngest son. He has 4 kids. They live up north central Kansas. And my feelings were hurt because we used to hang out a lot, and now I don't ever hear from them. And I was complaining to my wife, my feelings were hurt. I don't know how else to say it. And she goes, "You got to know that they're doing what they need to be doing. They're raising their kids." Okay, I could make that adjustment. But what happened to that relationship I used to have with him where we would talk much more frequently? And as our kids get older, we lose our spouses. Our spouse's health gets worse. Loneliness begins to creep in. Loneliness is a serious killer. Again, I'm almost done with this Debbie Downer part of the presentation. Bear with me. Loneliness increases your blood pressure, obesity. It accelerates the aging process. Stress hormones, immune systems tore down. Cardiovascular. Loneliness is worse than smoking and alcoholism. I won't go into it, but there's a reason for that. And it's something that many of us start to experience, especially as we get older. And for Joyce, all of her family turned against her. Her kids turned against her. One was off doing serious drugs. So I'm going to move off of this, and I wanted to show you a picture of me earlier in my life, and maybe you can relate. Sometimes big tragedies happen to us. And other times, it's just little things a layer at a time. Grief, loneliness, health issues. Before we know, it's almost more than we can bear. This is a picture of me. You can see some of my relatives on top of the stack. They thought I was financially responsible for them. They're no longer on that truck. So, how can we keep our golden years the best they can be? How do we keep the shine? Because I imagine, as you've heard me talk about this, it's registered. You've come here for a reason. Maybe it's just for information, but you're not stupid. You're going through life and you see these things happening. And it's not always easy. So I'm going to share with you 5 strategies. How are we doing on time? I'm going to share with you 5 strategies that I think can help reduce the stress and the negative effects life has on us and bolster our quality of life. And I don't want to stand up here and just talk about theory. Some of you recognize this person, Viktor Frankl. Some of you has read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was very interested in the role purpose played in people's lives. Viktor was a Jewish psychiatrist who lived in Nazi Germany. Guess what happened? Over 3 years, he spent time in 4 different concentration camps, Auschwitz being one of them. When he wasn't doing, he reflected, in 1959, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And he reflected back on his experience in the concentration camps. And when he wasn't doing slave labor, he and a number of other people would go around providing medical care for the others in the camp. Can you imagine he had no resources, but he still provided medical care. As he reflected back on his experience and some people didn't have a choice about life or death. But of those who didn't get shot or sent to the gas chambers, he reflected back and he says, what was it that helped some of us survive better than others? And it was those who had a sense of purpose seemed to fare better. Well, he created a whole psychotherapy called logotherapy after this, and it's helping people find a sense of purpose in life is an extremely powerful tool. And if it can help Viktor Frankl and others survive a concentration camp, I think it can help Kevin survive some of the things I'm going to be facing, and perhaps you. What makes life worth living? I want to share with you. As I was working with Joyce, Joyce had a granddaughter who went off to college. She was really struggling. And they had a relationship. And Joyce began to tell me about how her granddaughter would call her and talk to her. And she said, Kevin, I just listen. I don't offer advice. I just love her and listen. granddaughter's feedback for grandma is, you are the only one who listens to me. Research has shown that most people don't have someone in their life who will listen to them for 20 minutes. Think about it. Do you have someone in your life who will listen to you for 20 minutes? And so that was a great gift to the granddaughter. She's thriving now. But it was also a great gift to Joyce. She began to see purpose. And her difficult situation, her terrible situation, started to become more manageable. She began to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. There's a scale for loneliness, and it rates from 1 to 7. And for each point up the loneliness scale that a person scores, this was done on middle-aged people. For each point, there is a 12% reduction in death rates. Those who think they have more of a purpose. It reduces heart attacks by 27%. And it reduces the risks of stroke by 22%. Relationships. I imagine a lot of you have heard of Harvard's study of aging. It's the longest running study. It started in 1938. They chose 238 men. They only accepted men at the time. And they followed them over 80 years. Of course, some of them died. What was the outcome of the study? The quality of one's relationships has a tremendous impact on our mental and physical well-being. More than money and more than genetics, it's relationships that help us the most. Another way of looking at this is, well, since forever is the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In the late 1960s, they were studying depression, and they were testing a medication for depression. Well, all the rave at the time was something called cognitive behavioral therapy. You may have heard of it. It's where a therapist looks at the way someone's thinking because it affects their emotions and their behaviors. Well, this was all the rave. So they were comparing this antidepressant to cognitive behavioral therapy. And the researcher says, what the heck? We got to have a control group, but we don't want them to know that they're really not going to be doing anything. So we're going to make up a therapy. We'll call it interpersonal psychotherapy. And we're going to teach them how to have relationships. We're going to teach them how to communicate better with their loved ones. They won't know they're not getting real therapy. At the end of the study, son of a gun, it was as effective as cognitive behavioral therapy. It's since become one of the most tested therapies, and it teaches people how to survive loss, grief, transitions by having relationships and being able to communicate effectively. I'm going to have to, for the sake of time, I'm going to have to hurry through these. Being present. There's a research project recently that people with a cell phone who wanted to participate had to download this app. And it would chime them at random times, and it would ask them 3 questions. What are you doing? What are you thinking about? And rate your level of happiness. Those who were thinking about what they were doing were more happy. I wish I could go back in time and spin it with my sons. I remember worrying about work. And all the time I missed enjoying them. Just watching them grow. I missed out on a lot. Today my wife will make comments to me. You don't seem as stressed. I could tell you were really present with our grandkids. it's a tool that I use. I have anxiety. I'm going to have it probably my whole life, but I manage it. I try to manage it. Don't say anything, Marcia. I don't need any And she's not available for questions afterward. But another thing is mindfulness. Sometimes my mind, I have my mom's mind. It looks like the LA freeway. There's 6 lanes going this way, 6 lanes going that way, and everyone's got road rage. I can be out for a walk on a beautiful day, and I'll be thinking about something angry. And so being present takes me out of that spot. And this idea of quieting my mind through mindfulness is something that is very helpful. I'm now aware this war in my mind is completely unnecessary. I can't help it, but I can control, once I notice and become aware, what I do with it. Gratitude. As I slow down my mind, and I focus on my breath to quiet my mind, I begin thinking about things I'm thankful for. And it will take me from here on the anxiety scale to here, because I have so much to be thankful for. Now, what I don't want this to sound like is, you just need to be thankful for what you've got. That is very unhelpful. However, can we hold 2 things at the same time? We all have a capacity that we can hold negative emotion with. But once that gets filled up, it gets filled up. Can we hold that at the same time we're thankful? For me, it puts me in a better mind space. Gratitude, no matter where you are, can be a powerful tool. But it does not mean, oh, I'm just throwing a pity party. I just need to quit feeling sorry for myself. It's not that at all. We're human beings, and we all have experiences of pain. All right. Being present. Acceptance. One thing my parents did do very well, I kind of skipped over the steps I took with Joyce with being present and gratitude, but those were things we used. One thing my parents did very well is, as they were approaching, they lived with me for a while, and we had a lot of conversations, and they would sit down and they would say, Kevin, we've lived a great life. We're okay with where we're at. And this acceptance can be an extremely powerful tool. I remember this one lady who sat in a wheelchair and would look outside. She was looking at the parking lot. And I'd be walking through the cafeteria, and I'd look at her, and she would have this serene look on her face. I was jealous. I'm never like that. I went up, and I go, you always seem to be in a pleasant mood. You seem to be doing well. And she turns to me, and she smiles, and she goes, I just accept where I'm at. As human beings, I wish I could do that, but I'm a fighter. Some of us have been wired to accomplish big things and to push, and when we're like that, we want to control what's going on in our life, and we'll push back at whatever's trying to rob us of our joy. We do that with even pain. We'll mentally try to push it away. But this idea of acceptance is also a powerful strategy. Okay, so if you do these things, you're going to look just like this lady. We all know that, right? Everything's going to be wonderful. That's not the way it works. But these are tools that are extremely powerful. They're not for the sick. They're not for the mentally ill. They're for all of us. And as we learn that therapy and psychology is not for the sick, it's for all of us to live better lives, these can be very beneficial. Remember when you were a kid and you would walk outside and there'd be a puddle that had just rained? And you could see at the bottom of the puddle, but then you would step in it and all the sediment would come up and you could no longer see it. It was no longer clear. That's what our lives look like. We get so many things going on and things start to stack up on us. It's hard to look at what's going on objectively. Therapy can be a tool for you as well, to have someone that can stand outside yourself and walk with you and kind of give you some clarity. What makes therapy work? The relationship. I think it's absolutely critical next to someone has to want to get better. My profession has research that says it's not important that you like your client. That makes me cringe. Because if you and I sit in a room and I don't like you, it's going to take you 2 seconds to figure it out. Some of you instantly will know it. However, if I look at you as a good human being who's going through some hard things, I see the beauty in you. I see even the beauty in your tragedy. I talk to a lot of people whose spouses are having health problems and they're suffering from it. You've been married how many years? 60-some years? I stand back and I see the beauty in their relationship. They're sticking by each other. They're helping each other through it. And it's my job to not say, you're sick, you have depression, junk. It's my job, let's walk through this and let's make the best of this we can. Because there's some real beauty in here. And sometimes I have trouble selling that, okay? I'll tell you that right now. But I see the beauty. Client factors. Someone has to want to get better. They have to want to engage. One of the things I love to do is a large part of what makes therapy work is something that happened outside of therapy. Now, I don't know how psychology claims that we did that, because we didn't have anything to do with it. For example, if someone gets a big pay raise, their life changes. They feel less stressed. They can pay their bills. But being able, one of the things I enjoy doing with clients is looking for those opportunities outside of them, outside of the therapy office, that we can make better in their lives. I had a client that was 102 years old. One day I went in her office. She wanted to talk about being worried about her kids. They were retired and pushing 80, but she was worried about her kids. I thought it was funny at first, but then I started realizing as we get older, we get wiser, and we see if they do this, it's going to have this effect down their life. We get that now. We're never done parenting, and one of the things I enjoy is helping make improvements to the relationships. And hope and expectations. As we get to talk, I try to convince people, this is how I see it. How do you see it? And we come together with a solution in which we can approach the problem. And 15% of what works in therapy, I spent 6 years getting a PhD. 15%, that's what it counts for. No, I love what I do, but there's so much that we can do by ourselves. And we can bring in a therapist to help us through some of these things. I never want to see someone long-term necessarily. I want to get them in and out, and they can come back. I work for Deer Oaks, and Deer Oaks provides therapists for John Knox Village. I've been working independent living, and Mike Seitz is the rep for Deer Oaks. We have another social worker. And one thing I want to make clear is Stephanie Sanderson. She's a social worker. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, some of the social workers have better clinical training than PhDs do. I've been very impressed in the short time I've known Stephanie. So there are some resources that you can take advantage of should you care to. Melanie, just contact her. It doesn't psychology and therapy does not have to be weird. And so I think I want to leave some time for questions. Who has some questions, and how do we want to run that, Melanie?
Raise your hand. And we'll bring the mic to you. One moment, please. Here we go.
I'll go back over my
Hello.
my notes, and I'll see how much I missed.
Are you a psychiatrist?
Psychologist. I can't prescribe medication.
You might explain to us the difference between a psychiatrist and your discipline.
A psychiatrist has been through medical school, and then they go through additional training on medication that helps with diagnoses like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. My recommendation is I take some things. I take things to sleep, and I take things for anxiety. And I go straight to the psychiatrist. I want someone who knows the field to manage my medication. So, psychologist, I've gone through 6 years of training, and I learned how to do talk therapy. And one of the things I'm different than psychologists is, and I've been to enough psychologists to know this, when a psychologist doesn't know what to say back to the client, they'll throw them some information. Like the client will take this information, figure it out, and implement it in their life. I like to approach therapy from a transformational. I didn't want, let me finish up with Joyce. I skipped out on her. I worked with Joyce for a couple years. She's now in independent living. She has reduced her body movement by about 95%. She's got her driver's license back. She sent me a picture of her and her kids having Thanksgiving in her new apartment. She made tremendous growth in our time together. And I'm not saying that because I'm some great psychologist. I was willing to dive in with her, and we worked together to make huge transformation. And there's a huge difference between information and transformation.
Did you have another question?
Well, I just gave him an okay. I just said, that's good, because I think it's important to know the difference. You know, it's my opinion that we've got too many lawyers in this country and not enough mental practitioners that are practicing and the problem we've got with shooting school children is that we have people that are pulling the trigger that shouldn't even be close to a gun. But by limiting the sale of gun, that's not the issue. We need to give them treatment.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the reasons I talk about myself and some of the work I've done is because I don't want to, I went and got my PhD. I started at age 43. Like I said, I don't know what I was thinking. And most of the PhD students, so I had a lot of previous life experience. A lot of PhD students come straight out of graduate school. They're 23 years old. They have their PhD by 27, and they're out helping you with your problem. They're very highly intelligent young people, but they have no, I'm sorry? They have no life experience. I had a lot of life experience. Now, the intelligent piece, you know, I never would have gotten into Harvard, I'll tell you that. Is there another question?
Right here.
Are
Yes,
you
sir.
part of the staff at John Knox?
I am not. I work for Deer Oaks. Deer Oaks, I'm guessing, has about 1,500 facilities around the country that they provide mental health professionals, both psychiatrists and mental health workers. And I may be shortchanging that, Mike. Correct me if I'm... And so that's, Mike has a relationship with John Knox Village, and he provides the staffing needs. I come into people's houses, I talk to them, no one knows I come, and that's how it works. And so I work for Deer Oaks.
You take Medicare?
Oh, boy. Mike?
I can speak to that, I guess.
Yeah.
So we send a referral to Deer Oaks with the insurance information, and Deer Oaks will process that and then let us know the coverage. So yes, they take Medicare, multitude of insurances, and then they let us know if there's a copay, and then I let the resident know, and then we work through that if there's concerns with that.
You mentioned that you go to people's homes to talk with them. Do you have another place where you could meet individually with people? Because many times a person does not want to talk with their partner listening in.
That happens. And yes, I work with Melanie, and sometimes
And he uses my office.
yes,
The short end of
yes,
that.
absolutely, and that happens.
And we'll make sure there's a private place provided. Very good question. I mean, you can't really talk about your spouse with your spouse, right? Sorry. Any other questions? Oh, sure.
I just had a comment. When you said, I will come to your home and nobody will know, everybody in the hall will know, and then, then the whole village knows within a week. They may not know who you are, but a strange man was in her apartment at 3 o'clock.
But I carry this black folder. I carry this black folder, and everyone assumes I sell insurance. So I'm just going to, yeah, I sold her a good policy. I'm sorry, what did you say, ma'am?
I said I wouldn't care if they know.
And, you know, I'm sorry? Yes, and confidentiality is very important. A lot of psychologists would cringe at me saying that, but we really become friends. We're working through things together. And, you know, I introduce people as friends, and I say hi to them as friends. That's the relationship I want to perpetuate. Someone got a hard question? Really hard question. I'm in the mood for a hard question. Okay, yes, sir.
Give him.
Yeah.
Our entire neighborhood, John Knox, has around 1,000 people. So only 10% of that 1,000 people thought they needed to come and listen to you. What happened to the other part?
Well, because we've done a terrible job of marketing ourselves. You come see me, you got a problem. You know, that's the reputation we've perpetuated. But the truth is, we had 40 people on the wait list for this. And I think mental health is starting to make some grounds. That's one of my missions is I want people, I want to take the weirdness out of it. But some people, you know, they're tough. They're really tough, and they're like that truck. They hold this stuff on, and they hold it till they die. And I have respect for them. You know, that's how many of us were raised. You suck it up. And so there's some of that we're battling as well. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. It was a good question. The number of people who seek mental health services is very low. And there's a lot of, you know, it could be cost, it could be availability. You know, if you ask me on the outside, Kevin, who could you refer me to? Someone good. I don't have a name for you. It's hard to find good therapists. And I think Deer Oaks does a really good job. I've met Stephanie, and I've been very impressed with her. I think Deer Oaks does a great job of getting good, capable people in.
I love what it is that we've learned today, but on my mind is, what is the chances of a group being put together that's working on loneliness or working on those 5 things that you mentioned, so that more people are connected and more people have good information how there's help out there?
That is a great idea, and I think if that happened more, one of the things that really was a catalyst in my life is I got together with 2 friends, and we just talked about what we want to do with our lives. And they would give me feedback on my dreams, and I would give them feedback. But having a group of people to talk about things like that and be real and be honest it's tricky. I don't know how we handle groups with Deer Oaks, but I think it sounds like a great idea. I don't know how it works, though.
A lot of times in groups, you need to have a really good leader.
Yes.
Because there'll be somebody that will take all the time,
Yes.
and then somebody who came there with an issue never got a chance to speak. So it's really important when you're in a group situation, particularly therapy, to let everyone speak.
You're absolutely right. I used to run groups in homeless shelters, so I have a little bit of experience.
I'm not ashamed to say that I have had mental health issues for most of my life, have been through several therapists, and Dr. Kevin has been working with me for several months. And I need to tell you that he is the best that I have ever met. He has helped me a lot, is beyond belief. Every time he's come to my house, he leaves and I just feel so much better. But I mean, he's put things into perspective that I didn't understand before. And he makes things clear. He doesn't speak down to you. He doesn't try to raise himself up at all. He's very real, and he's very honest, and I recommend him highly. And it is not anything to be ashamed of. We all have issues, and some of it is somebody else's fault, and some of it is not anybody's fault. Some of it is just the experiences we've been through in our lives. But he really makes it clear, and he does a wonderful job.
That was so kind of you. This is very humbling. I'm honored to be up here and talking to you. That's how I look at this.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry I was late today. I probably need your counseling more than anyone in this room. But I will say that you were recommended, coming today was extremely recommended by this lovely lady who just spoke. And I just want to say counseling is the best thing that any of us can ever do. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to meet you sometime soon. So thank you again for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else before we wrap it up?
I just want to say that this is a humbling experience. I thank you all for your interest in this, and it's been my honor to speak to you today. Thank you.
Well, so I'm going to leave some of my business cards somewhere, maybe out there. On that table still out there? Or back by the cookies. Anyway, got to have a cookie before you go. And pick it up, give me a call if you ever want to have some more discussion about this, and I'd be happy. Just want to make kind of a side note about Deer Oaks. We expanded them into independent living about 2 years ago. So primarily they were positioned in our assisted living and our Village Care Center. And when I kind of sprung out of the care center into independent living, I felt like there was just that kind of that need there, and we didn't really have it. So I worked with Mike, and we started to spread our wings into independent living. So a lot of people don't know it's available, and so I hope this helps kind of bring awareness. So thank you guys so much for coming. He said he'll hang out for a little bit if you want to talk to him.